Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today it is time for the Mokka to be having its full service this year. So with my cars I tend to do the spark plugs and air filter every 20,000 miles, and I do the oil and oil filter every 10,000 miles every year. So I tend to do spark plugs and air filters every couple of years, as they don't wear as quick as oil and oil filters. I'm not going to show you how to do the oil change, because I've already done that in my VXR video, which I'll leave this link in the description below. But to do a full service, which includes changing the spark plugs and the air filter, that is the only addition to also changing the oil and the oil filter and the sump plug, you will obviously need some spark plugs. These are NGK spark plugs, and you will obviously need a fresh brand new air filter. This is a FAI air filter, and obviously you'll need all the normal stuff that you require to do a service, obviously, and oil change, so your torque wrench, and the only additional piece of equipment you're going to need is obviously a spark plug socket, which and some gaffer tape, which I'll show you why you require this stuff also later on. So I will just crack on and quickly do the oil change, and then we'll get to the spark plugs and the air filter. So just a note on these Vauxhall Mokkas: the oil filter, instead of the VXR where it is underneath the car, it is located there in the engine bay, just between the exhaust and sort of like the engine block. The next part now is, whilst the engine is warm, we want to remove spark plugs, and also do this whilst your engine oil is also draining. So obviously if you want a long extender, I don't have a long extender, so I'm using two short extenders, which obviously you then put onto your spark plug socket. Now, I was shown this by a video on YouTube, and that is to stop your equipment and your sockets potentially coming apart whilst you are trying to pull out the spark plug from the engine, and that is to gaffer tape, also really strong duct tape together your spark plug socket and your extenders, so that when you go to remove the spark plug, you don't risk losing or having the parts left inside the engine bay, and then you can't get them out, which obviously would be an absolute disaster. So with that all gaffer taped up now, we will remove the spark plugs from the car. To start with, you just want to unclip your cover, and now obviously we expose the coil pack, which on some cars they either have HT leads. Some of the older cars have HT leads, like an MX-5 or something like that. But a lot of modern cars now have coil packs, which are rather expensive. I don't really know why. They changed it. Maybe they're more reliable. But when a coil pack goes wrong, it's really expensive to replace. So, first job is to just unclip this little bit here, and to take off the power lead for the coil pack. Can be a bit of a bug. Mine's actually broken, so I have to sort of like fit it in place, but does not interfere with the actual running of the car. So once you've done that, you normally get a flathead screwdriver and just sort of like press down on the clip and just pull it out like that, and just put it obviously to the one side, And now you need to remove the coil pack using a T40 torque attachment piece, which obviously you can put onto your attachment. Looks a little bit like a sort of like a socket, sort of like a Allen key sort of thing, and just very gently start undoing the bolts until they're loose. Obviously it is best to do this whilst the engine is warm, just so that the bolts do come out nice and easily. You do not want to risk shearing these off and snapping them whilst they're in the engine block, because obviously they would then have to be drilled out, which would be, you know, obviously a lot of money and a bit of a ball ache as well. So with the top of the heads now exposed, you can just undo the rest by hand, take out the bolts, put them to one side, and now the removing of the coil pack. These can be a bit tricky, but gladly that has slid out nice and easy. And just obviously put that to one side. And now it is the simple matter of just getting your extender and your spark plug socket, but obviously make sure the rubber piece is in so that you can obviously grab hold of the spark plugs, and you just want to move it around until you feel it drop down onto the spark plug. This has been a bit of a pain. I had the wrong spark plug socket, so you want to make sure you've got a 10mm spark plug socket with obviously the rubber bit in the middle, and just, yeah, pop it in until it drops down onto the thing, and just gently start loosening the spark plug. I mean, to be fair, once you've got it loose, you can then tend to do them by hand the rest of the way. And there you have it. That is the spark plug removed. And obviously just do that for all the other three. With the old spark plugs removed, it is now time to install the new ones. As you can see, it says talking down to 25 to 30 Newton meters, so I've been recommended to tighten it down to 25. So obviously I think the best thing to do is to, well, obviously try not touch the coil bit, the bit that makes the spark. You don't want to get it dirty, risk any contaminants. We'll tighten it down by hand. What I do is, obviously you want to install it into your socket, and then I like to do it anti-clockwise until you hear the thread lock into the thread of the engine block of where the spark plug sits, because then you know that you're not going to risk cross-threading it, and for your next service the spark plug will easily come out. Yeah, obviously, yet again, you don't want to risk a spark plug being stuck in your engine bay, because obviously you will then have to have it drilled out, which will cost a lot of money. So with that, we'll just pop it into the cylinder and just listen for like a drop or a click, just sort of there. And once you're satisfied that it is in the thread, start doing it up by hand until you until basically you can't tighten it anymore. And then you want to get your torque wrench and torque it down to 25 Newton meters. So we've got our torque wrench. Get our torque wrench and set it to the correct torque. So what are we, 20? That's 20, 25, and we'll just torque it down to the correct torque. There we go. And making sure when you have finished that the rubber part is still on your spark plug socket, and we will carry on with the other three. One thing that I did forget to say, and that is some spark plugs do require a possibly a change in the gap between obviously the spark and the top piece. Depending on your engine, you may need to increase it or decrease it, and you can get a feeler gauge under there, but normally spark plugs are set to the correct gauge. So I've not had any experienced any problems with not changing the gap, but yeah, depending on your car and obviously your engine, you may need to change the gap. Okay, so now with the spark plugs torqued down to 25 Newton meters, only thing left to do now is to reinstall the coil pack, which is literally, you know, cars you think are very, very complicated and difficult to work on, but to be brutally honest, obviously some parts of the car very tricky, but things like servicing, it's pretty much very straightforward, very simple, and is also pretty much, you know, the putting stuff back on is exactly the reverse of taking it off. So now it's just a matter of fact of just putting the coil pack back into the spark plug holes and making sure that it is all, get it pressed into those spark plugs, making sure for a nice solid connection, and to reinstall the plug, which obviously you would normally hear a click when the connector goes back on. Obviously mine is broken, so I'm just going to place that bit back on. I mean, I would get a new one, but sadly that would mean, well, I'm guessing a whole new wiring loom, because you can't just replace this socket. So for now, that we have to do, but yes, just make sure it is properly secure and on, and then it is the straightforward task of just putting the bolts back in, and these, yet again, do them anti-clockwise until you feel them go into the thread, and we can do these by hand just until we can't do them anymore. And we torque these down with the torque wrench to 15 Newton meters. So with them all torqued down, you can now replace your cover. Just clips in place like so. And with that, we now move on to the air filter. Depending on what car you have, it might be fitted with a different screws. I mean, this is just a sort of like normal crosshead screwdriver screw. Some of them are fitted with torque head screws. The one on my VXR is, but this is just a standard screwdriver. It's like Phillips. is what I've always known them to be. But yeah, just a normal cross head screwdriver bit. Depending on what filter you have, you normally have a couple of screws, one at the bottom, one at the top, and depending on your car, you might not even have any screws at all. So just unscrew them like that. I mean, this is the easiest part of a service, because it is practically as it says on the tin. It's just an air filter. So you remove the housing to expose the filter. If you've got anything in your air filter housing, like leaves and dust and stuff, you can take this opportunity to hoover it out, or just get the worst of it out. But obviously it just comes to show that an air filter is doing its job, because of the fact that all of that would have ended up in the engine. So the new air filter, which we'll just remove from the packaging, trying not to get it too dirty as we're putting it onto the car, with the obviously the main part of the filter going into the air filter, and sort of like the pink bit at the top, making sure it's securely pressed in, and then just reinstalling the air filter like so, and doing up the screws. And that is the simplicity of changing an air filter, which I've just dropped the screw into the engine bay. See, sometimes servicing a car is much fun. I'm going to have a little search. And with that is basically a full service. Obviously the oil change and the oil filter we covered in the other video. We've done the spark plugs, we've changed the air filter as well. We've completely lost the screw. It happens, you know. I'm sure if anyone has ever owned a 10mm socket, I'm sure they have lost it and bought more than they can ever remember. But yeah, that is a full service. So oil filter, spark plugs, air filter. I mean, if you wish, you can also replace the pollen filter, also known as the cabin filter, but I don't need to really worry about it too much. But yeah, that concludes this video. Do like and subscribe. There is going to be another video on this car, and that is how to replace your car key, because as you can see, as many do, the unlock button is broken, so I'm having to use a stick to unlock this car at the minute. So once the new key arrives, that will be the next project, which will be replacing the cover on a Vauxhall key. I think they're all pretty much standard throughout the Vauxhall range, so you can obviously replace your car key on any Vauxhall. But yes, that is it for this video. I'm going to carry on and do the oil and the oil filter, and yeah, that'll be the old girl ready to go again for another, well, spark plugs for another 2 years and oil for another year. Anyway, going to be hopefully maybe thinking about doing some modifications to this car, because this is just a normal 1.6 litre Vauxhall Mokka, and I think it needs some improvement, which will probably be inspired by my daughter. So I'm thinking probably pink brake calipers and a lowered Y height and some better alloys, as it is just a bog standard car and hasn't got much going for it at the minute, but it needs improving. But yes, on that note, we will see you next time.